In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building by the nearest exit, which is the staircase opposite, and meet at assembly point 9 in the outside area beyond the fire exit. Officers will assist with any evacuation. Please listen to the debate in silence. With regard to mobile phones, as a modern council, both officers and members will use their electronic devices throughout the meeting. Please can everyone ensure that their mobile telephones are switched to silent during the meeting. For votes on items, I will initially ask council if the issue can be agreed. I will pause to allow councillors to indicate whether they'd like a vote, recorded vote, or to move an alternative. Finally, use of microphones. Before speaking, please tap the base of the microphone until the light turns green and then speak. Okay. At the start of this meeting, I had some rather sad news to share with members. Since our last meeting, we have lost 2 former members of the council, Richard Webber and Margaret Crick. Richard Webber served as the ward member for Drayton from 2005 to 2015, and later represented Sutton Courtenay from 2019 to 2024. He was also a member of Oxfordshire County Council, having been elected in 2013. He led the Liberal Democrat group on both councils. Throughout his years of service, Richard was a dedicated advocate for his communities and contributed greatly to the council's work. Margaret Crick served as the ward member for Abingdon Dunmore from 2014 until May 2023. During her time on the council, she had the distinction of serving as chair from 2019 to 2023, a role which required significant adaptation as it took the council through the COVID years. She also served on Abingdon Town Council from 2007 until her death. Margaret was a committed public servant who made a significant contribution to a local community and was a champion of those most in need of help. I, in particular, shall remember her for her warmth and sense of humour. Will all those who are able please stand for a minute's silence? Item 1 on the agenda. I've received apologies for absence from councillors Cook, Shaw and Whiteman. Are there any other further apologies? Item 2 is the minutes. The council is asked to adopt and agree for me to sign as a correct record the minutes of the council meeting held on 13th of May 2026. Please could I have a proposer to adopt them as correct records? Councillor Edwards, thank you very much. Is that seconded? Fine. Will you share with us,
Yeah. Do you mind
Councillor Bentley?
speaking to the mic? Sorry.
Is that better? Point number 8, the appointments to committees. I understood that I had been taken off the scrutiny committee and put on the planning committee, but that's not reflected in the minutes.
Are you proposing an amendment, Councillor
Yes.
Bentley? Is there anyone who will second that amendment, please? Councillor Coleman. Will all those in favour of the amendment please show?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I move back to the council is asked to adopt and agree for me to sign as a correct record the amended minutes of the council meeting held on 13th of May 2026. Councillor Edwards. Thank you. Is that seconded? Councillor Coleman. Can the amended minutes be agreed? Agreed. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting? No, clearly not. I will now move on to the Chair's announcements. Firstly, I should like, on behalf of us all, to send our commiserations and best wishes to all those at Oaks Caravan Park who have been affected by the terrible fire. We should also send our thanks to all the public servants who dealt with this issue, but especially in this forum, to the housing needs team and all other officers who performed so magnificently in this emergency. And Councillor Rayner, as the living very near to there, perhaps you would like to say a word.
I'd like to concur everything the Chair said. It was very scary, and the emergency services and our own officers were absolutely tremendous. I think just a reflection of how we need to be very aware of what's going on in this extreme heat. But again, thank you to everyone involved.
Thank you very much. Secondly, I've just got a few announcements, some of which you may have heard before. As of yesterday, I've invited everybody here to a luncheon for my charities, but an informal luncheon on the 13th of September at my house. Not the 13th of July, as was in the initial email, for which I take full responsibility, and thanks to those who so kindly pointed out the error of my ways. On the 25th of September as well, there's the Chair's quiz, and on the 12th of November, we're holding a cinema event at the Abbey Hall in conjunction with Oxfordshire Mind, again, for which entry will be fee-free, but there will be donations sought if people wish to make them. And I hope as many people as possible will be able to attend that. Item 5, public participation. No public speakers have registered to address council this evening. And item 6, there are no petitions from the public. Constitution review. Council is invited to consider proposed changes to the Council's constitution as recommended by the Joint Constitution Review Task Group. I always think the name of that group is almost as long as our overlong constitution, actually, but that's perhaps just my view. I invite Nick Bennett, Director of Legal and Democratic, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Members will realise from the report, but so that the public outside fully realise, the Joint Constitution Group meets consistently through the life of the council to ensure that the constitution for this council is fit for purpose and delivers what is needed by way of efficient decision making, which is what it's all about. As reported, there are 6 members in there, including several who are in the room today. Chair, I think what I'd like to do, because I know you were present for it, is simply go through the main changes that this represents. You'll see at section 6 of the report, there were several changes which were not contentious, which were straightforward. Well, none of these were contentious. I should explain that first. Section 6 sets out about the grant funding arrangements for the council. In effect, all it does is remove some of the old grant funding mechanisms which are no longer in existence. And so they're for removal, and there were some other sort of consequential steps there. Section 9 sets out the housing scheme of delegation. Again, legislation changed and increased the range of powers that was needed for the housing service to deliver social housing support in particular, something which from previous decisions of this council is clearly front and centre of the council's concerns. So that needs to be updated, and it now will follow the legislation, assuming you approve this as a body. And finally, at section 14, improvements to the seal or the way in which we apply the seal and the wording which is required to apply the seal to formal deeds of the council. What that will do is improve consistency with your partner council, South Oxfordshire, but also for both councils will then move to a more modern term phrasing, which will be applied to the application of the seal, which will provide comfort to those that we offer it to, particularly people like mortgage companies, for example, who tend to have expectations we're using more modern phrasing. So I can go into more detail if your members wished, but all of these went through the Constitution Review Group, as members will be able to affirm fairly non-contentiously. There are further changes, and I don't want to surprise members when the next time this Constitution Review Group is reported, where there were matters which were more contentious and they require more detailed consideration by members, and so a further report will follow. But these were all matters which are needed to make sure that we can continue to deliver the high quality services, particularly in the area of housing scheme, grants, delivery, and in application of the seal, so that the promises of the council are properly and formally laid out. Chair, I think I'll go quiet at that point and revert and return to yourself, if I may.
Thank you very much, Nick. Are there any questions? Right. As co-chair of the task group, I'd like to propose that council accept the recommendations. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Fawcett. I'll just briefly say that at the meeting, we obviously consider the recommendations brought forward to us by officers, but as I'm sure Nick will testify, we don't accept them all, actually. And some members of that group, including myself, are very, very keen indeed to make sure that matters that should properly, on which councillors should properly have a say, are not given merely to officers to make decisions on. And I think that's an important point to make. Can the changes be agreed? Thank you. Item 8 is report of the leader of the council. Councillor Thomas, would you like to address the council?
Thank you. So that's right. Thank you, Chair. It's a pleasure to address Council at this early hour, and I'm grateful to you, Chair, for making the decision to bring this meeting forward so we can all be part of something tonight if we choose to. Returning home, or perhaps to our local pub or football club to cheer England's men on. With all the talk of the World Cup, it may be easy for some news stories to play second fiddle. But to us, the news that we are expecting the government to make its announcement on local government reorganisation tomorrow has been our focus. This moment has been described as the most significant change to local government in over half a century. And so I wanted to recap possibilities ahead of us and reflect briefly on what all of this means. As you know, after the deadline to submit plans last November, the government has been considering 3 proposals for Oxfordshire. At Vale, we worked closely with colleagues at West Berkshire, South Oxfordshire, Cherwell and West Oxfordshire to develop a positive proposal for 2 new unitary councils that we believe would balance the need for local accountability while meeting the government's requirements for scale and financial resilience. In contrast, the County Council put forward a proposal for a single large unitary council for the whole of Oxfordshire. The City Council put forward a proposal for 3 small unitary councils, based around an expanded city to be called Greater Oxford, which would include absorbing 9 Vale parishes that sit in the Greenbelt. Our proposal was the only one supported by more than one council, working in partnership in the way that we will continue to do whatever the outcome tomorrow. And this is one of the reasons that I firmly believe that our proposal for 2 unitary councils is the best way forward for our communities. Many of you agree with me, some of you might not. We have made a strong case backed up by the views of our communities, but as we have always said, the decision here ultimately lies with the government. I am sure everyone has heard rumours one way or another, and I am sure we have all been on tenterhooks speculating on the outcome as the date of the announcement has been pushed further and further back until we reach the very last day of the government's agreed timetable, the very last day Parliament sits before the summer recess, waiting to hear our fate, which I have just heard will be at 10:15 tomorrow morning. I have no firm indication of what the outcome is likely to be. But whatever the government announces, I am absolutely determined that the Vale will begin work immediately to ensure that our residents, businesses, communities are at the forefront of conversations to develop the new unitary council or councils. I'm sure each council will react differently to tomorrow's announcement, some taking it better than others. On a personal level, I will obviously feel disappointed if our proposal is not chosen, knowing the amount of work that has gone into it, understanding the concerns of residents who have expressed their worries about being swallowed up or ignored, and strongly believing that our models struck the balance, allowing for local accountability and financial stability. However, come tomorrow morning, afternoon, I'm not quite sure of how it all pans out. When the announcement is made officially, I will put these feelings aside as we will all have a job to do. I want to assure everyone here tonight, officers throughout the council and residents across the Vale, that we want a well-managed, collaborative approach to transition that will smooth the way forward for a strong new council for our region. Even if the decision is not our preferred option, we will work positively and collaboratively with all Oxfordshire and West Berkshire colleagues towards that goal with determination. And now for the cheesy bit. And so, bringing this to an end, and speaking of goals, we hope that another team tonight will have that same determination as we all cheer them on. Come on, England, you've got this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. I appreciate your comments on the England football team, and I'm wondering whether you will support the England cricket team in the next Ashes tours in the series. The next item on the agenda, number 9, is the Oxfordshire Leaders Joint Committee update. Council is invited to receive the update report included in the supplementary papers. Are there any questions relating specifically to the update report? Accordingly, can we, sorry? No, sorry. Accordingly, can we note the report? Item 10, questions on notice. We have 9 questions. The questions are set out on the agenda, and the written responses have been circulated to all councillors and published on the council's website. I therefore propose we move to any supplementary questions. Councillor Evans, who is online, would you like to ask a supplementary question? Clearly not. Question B, mental health and suicide prevention. Councillor Edwards, would you like to ask a supplementary question? Excuse me. Question C, local government reorganisation, electoral representation and warding. Councillor Evans, would you like to ask a supplementary question? Question D, joint local.
Sorry, Chair. Can I stop you? There's a message coming. Apologies if that didn't come through. As I'm not in the meeting, I think it would be most proper not to ask supplementaries. So happy for you to move on, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Evans. I had checked that it was in order to ask you questions, but I do understand that and I appreciate it. Question D, joint local plan and CESRO impacts. Councillor Whiteman is unfortunately not here, so I think we can move on. Question E, financial impact of local government reorganisation and local plan work. Councillor Coleman, that can't be right. Who asked the question?
Councillor Whiteman sent apologies, just if Councillor Coleman did anything further to add.
Fine. Councillor Coleman, is there anything you wish to add to your written response? There's Councillor Fulsham. Did you wish to add anything to your written response on joint local plan and CESRO impacts?
Thank you, Chair. I've got nothing to add.
Question F, heat waves, climate resilience and support for vulnerable residents. Councillor Gascoigne, would you like to ask a supplementary question? Councillor, question G, biodiversity net gain and the QE2 recreation project in Stanford. Councillor Evans, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Probably no.
Oh no, of course. Sorry, we've been through that, Councillor Evans. I was looking for you in the room at that point. Sorry. Question H, water safety. Councillor De La Harpe, who's definitely here, I've seen him. Would you like to ask a supplementary question? No. Thank you. And question I, decarbonisation of the waste and recycling vehicle fleet. Councillor De La Harpe, would you like to ask a supplementary question? No. Okay. We then moved on to item 11, motions on notice. There is one motion to consider. I will refer members to the revised motion that was circulated and published on the 13th of July. The motion is to deal with inclusive council services and EHRC Equality Act Code of Practice. Councillor Foxhall, would you like to propose your motion? Is that seconded? Yes. Councillor Rayner. Councillor Foxhall, would you like to speak to your motion?
Apologies, I've left my glasses in the car, so everything is a blur, including my screen. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak on this motion. So this motion asks Council to reaffirm our commitment to the inclusion, safety and equality of transgender, non-binary and gender non-conforming men, women and young people in our districts. It is necessary because in April 2025, the UK Supreme Court ruled that the legal definition of a woman for the purposes of the Equality Act 2010 must be based on biological sex as assigned at birth. Specifically, this includes people with gender recognition certificates who have legally changed their sex in the UK. Following this ruling, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, or EHRC, proposed changes to the Code of Practice for Services, Public Functions and Associations. As of the 9th of July this year, this code has now become statutory guidance. Organisations who have for many years included trans women in access to women-only services or spaces can no longer describe or operate these as single sex under the Equality Act, according to the guidance now. This has implications for a wide range of organisations and services, including healthcare, hospitality, domestic violence support, leisure and community organisations, many of which are at the heart of the services we provide as a council. This guidance creates huge uncertainty and has a real-life impact. It leaves organisations, groups and businesses who have for many years included trans women in access to women-only services or spaces, and indeed to including trans men within men's-only services and spaces, with a legal minefield and significant expense if they wish to continue being inclusive. To be clear, this guidance is cruel and unnecessary. It cements exclusion, segregation, and hostility, particularly as we see it emerging alongside parallel guidance within healthcare and for schools. It will cause real harm and is already causing real harm to trans people who have accessed spaces and services for years without incident. It is 2 decades of austerity, the ubiquitous acceptance of male violence within our culture, and the rise of right-wing extremist politics that most threatens the safety of women and girls. This guidance does nothing to solve the deep structural and multiple crises in our health systems, social services, prison service, and public facilities. So that's why we've brought this motion as a Green Group. We understand that this council has an obligation to act within the law in its provision of services. We also appreciate the officers have already been working hard to understand how this code affects our services and leisure centres and to ensure that they remain inclusive. But at a time when we are seeing councils across the country roll back on their support for LGBTQ+ communities, we feel it's important to demonstrate to residents publicly that this council has been, is still, and will remain committed to inclusion, equality, and the safety of our transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming residents and visitors. So I ask you all to support this motion, and I want to conclude by thanking the Liberal Democrat group, particularly Councillor Rayner, who's agreed to second this motion, for your genuine, positive, and supportive response to this motion. And the number of emails I've had from individuals attest to this, and I thank you all to everyone who's been in touch. I also want to thank our colleagues at South Oxfordshire and Oxford City Greens, who have been working closely with us to bring parallel motions to our full councils this week. And it was unfortunate that Oxford City meeting timed out and it was unable to be heard. So I hope you'll support this motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Foxall. Councillor Rayner, as the seconder, would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
I'd like to reserve my right, Chair. Thank you.
Would Council like to debate the motion? Councillor Fulsham.
Thank you, Chair. As many members will remember, I was one of those who spoke in favour of the December 2021 motion as a matter of deeply held principle. In the intervening years, I've been on something of a journey. Several years ago, my younger child came out as non-binary and subsequently as trans. So this motion is not just important, but for me it is personal. And if that means that there is more emotion in my speech than usual, I apologise. It's been my privilege to walk along with my daughter and support her as she transitions. But her story isn't mine to tell, it's hers. I have, however, had a front row seat to see the chilling effects of the Supreme Court ruling and the subsequent EHRC guidance on my daughter and her friends. It took ambiguity from the 2010 Equality Act and used its completely changed meaning of the legislation from protecting transgender individuals into a way to remove their rights, despite the comments of the Supreme Court to the contrary as they made their ruling. I've seen previously confident individuals now fear going out in public in case they need a toilet. And having to wonder which retail and leisure establishments are safe for them to use or where they're likely to face intrusive questions. My own daughter wonders regularly if she can compete in the sport she loves, despite it not being gendered in the vast majority of events. We now regularly see high-profile figures calling for violence against trans individuals with apparent impunity. Hate crimes against trans people are hugely underreported. Over 88% do not report them, as 48% report dissatisfaction with police action when they do so. Is it any wonder that many trans people are wondering if they should stay in their own country? Members, these people are hurting. Our friends, our colleagues, our family members, people just like you and me. People want to live just as they are, without having to pretend or to hide. I commit today to standing with them and for them. We see organisations that are such a long-established part of life in the UK as the Women's Institutes and Girl Guiding threatened with very well-funded litigation unless they ban their transgender members. And they've had to cave in for fear of being bankrupted by legal costs. They simply can't compete with the well-heeled funders of anti-trans campaigns from the UK and the USA. Many of the WI members who have been forced out were part of that organisation for decades. And for the former Girl Guides, well, they've been driven out from one of the few safe spaces where they could be themselves. Guide leaders are handing in their warrants instead of being part of expelling girls in their care. Incidentally, I want to pay tribute to the wonderful Guiders Against Trans Exclusion who formed in response to this. And I must say, their protests are some of the best organised, well stewarded, and well provided with first aid cover that I've ever seen. I just wonder why. I remain convinced that not only should we commit to continue delivering our services in an inclusive manner, but that we must do so. I didn't become a councillor to deliver services for most of our community. I did so for all of our community. I firmly believe that we can continue to do so within the law and that we must. So, if you believe that these culture wars have gone too far, vote for the motion. If you believe that organisations like the WI and Girl Guiding should go back to supporting their members without fear of being sued, vote for the motion. If you're willing to stand with trans members of our community as they face being vilified, scapegoated and targeted for being different, vote for the motion. If you believe that our services are for all, vote for the motion. If you have an ounce of compassion and humanity, just vote for the damn motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forsham. Are there any other contributions? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you. I was delighted to see this come forward, and I think everybody will support the inclusivity of it, and a very positive thing to say. Can I just get some reassurance that we will remain and retain within the law as it is, and that there is no ongoing cost implications to the council if this motion is adopted? Thank you.
Chair, would you like me to?
Yes, please.
So Chair, I'm responding with the permission of Councillor Foxhall through you, but to confirm, absolutely, as your monitoring officer, that's my main function, is to make sure that the decisions that are made day to day by services are lawful, as well as the policies that you do. I was very grateful to be approached by Councillor Foxhall and others around this, including internal officers who are specialists in the HR field, facilities field, the communities field, all to make sure that this was both delivering what was wanted by, from what I'm hearing today, you as members, potentially, but also to ensure we stay within the law. There are further advices that are coming forward at the moment from the Local Government Association Legal Advisory Service, which we are buying into effectively to make sure that we get further detail on that. But certainly right now, this is entirely comfortable with the lawful position, and we will make sure that it remains so, and that delivery of services remain lawful as well as required by the motion, if that was approved.
Are you able to comment on the cost point that was made as well?
I'm not, Chair. I'm so sorry. Although Councillor Kilman, I can see, is leaping in.
Thank you, Chair. So I did make some inquiries just to understand what the implications of the motion were, and any commitment that might put the council under. So the Code of Conduct is guidance as to the implementation of an existing act, the Equalities Act. So we have a legal requirement to do whatever is required to meet the act, not to meet the Code of Conduct. Okay, the Code of Conduct just explains it. Therefore, unfortunately, what that means is that there is no new burden. So the government will not give us any additional funding for any activities that we might need. And if I put those, it might be change of signage, for example. It might be change to letterheads or whatever. So there is no new money coming from the government. And so I do thank Councillor Foxhall for putting, I think it was her last bullet point that said that we should write to government asking for some additional funding, because there will inevitably be a cost. However, even were this motion not to be put before council today, there would still be a cost. So in of itself, this motion does not increase any costs that we would already necessarily have to meet to pay for to meet the Equalities Act. Does that clarify the position?
Through the chair.
Chair, does that clarify the position?
I think that does that admirably. Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any other contributions? Councillor Rayner, would you like to speak now as seconder?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm seconding this motion as a woman, a feminist, but most of all as a human. Firstly, could you indulge me? Could I ask you all to sit back for a moment and in your heads replace the phrase trans women in the motion with black, working class, or lesbian? It seems a little incomprehensible. Yet not so long ago, these groups that were under debate, excluded, marginalised, as we fought to bring this abhorrent discrimination to an end. Yet here we are again. As a council, our first responsibility is to ensure that every resident who walks through our doors, who uses our leisure centres, accesses our support services, feels safe, respected and valued. Human decency dictates that we do not force a marginalised community into the shadows, barring them from essential spaces that they've used for years without issue. As Councillor Foxhall pointed out, 5 years ago and again 4 years ago, we as a council confirmed our belief that inclusivity, and I cannot ever say that word, is not a trend that we can discard when the legal landscape shifts. It's a core value of who we are. When we begin strictly policing who is woman enough to enter a space based on biological markers or appearances or a tie, we are excluding our true feminist fights against the policing of women's bodies. Barring trans women from women's spaces does not make cis women safer. It simply leaves trans women entirely unprotected. Real safety comes from robustly funding and securely designing our services, not from scapegoating a minority. The EHRC code states that single-sex restrictions must be proportionate means of achieving a legitimate aim. It's not a blanket mandate to exclude and to give the responsibility for gender policing to our staff at leisure centres, libraries and community centres. We can comply with the law while still upholding the spirit of human decency. This motion is a signal to our staff, to our residents and to the wider community that within the law, this council will use every tool and every ounce of compassion we have to ensure no one is left behind. And it's for that reason that I wholeheartedly support this excellent motion, even though I feel saddened that we have a need to be here at all. Once again, thank you, Councillor Foxhall, for bringing this to the table.
Thank you, Councillor Rayner. Councillor Foxhall, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will just make a couple of comments. Thank you to those who spoke, and particularly Councillor Fulsham for sharing your very personal perspective on it. I really appreciate that. Just to comment on Councillor Bentley's points. Yes, this is probably the motion that we've brought earliest to officers, precisely because we did consider how important it is to get right and to ensure that we are doing it properly and legally. And so I thank Nick and Mark Minion and other officers who've been involved in discussions with us for their constructive and positive response. And I also would like to reflect on Councillor Rayner's points, because I think often, sadly, it is women at the forefront of exclusionary voices. But as women, we also lose from attempts to roll back equality and inclusion. And so I thank Councillor Rayner for joining me in presenting this motion to you today. Really, I think what we want to do with this motion is to really just say to officers and ask officers, when you do have a need or an opportunity to make decisions about the spaces and surfaces that we offer, please be reassured that as a council we are behind you, and that we want this council to be as inclusive as it possibly can, and that you have our support to do that. And so I hope that you will all vote for this motion, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Foxall. Members, can we agree to the motion? Agreed. Agreed. So that's unanimous. That, I think, brings us to the end of, unless I've missed something, formal business. Can I just make members aware that provisionally there may be another meeting on the 23rd of September, I think. Is that the right, correct? It is, because it's in my diary, which will be necessary in order to agree changes to the Constitution because of the new planning regulations. With that, I bring the meeting to a close. Thank you very much.
Please, can you end the broadcast?